I think we all can agree on one thing. iPhone 15 Pro Max is the star of the show this year, and a noticeable step up from the 14 Pro Max, but I think that the 15 Pro is just as big of an upgrade over the 14 Pro. So let's take these two and put my theory to the test. Because if we don't pay much attention, the improvements to 15 Pro seem relatively minor. The camera hardware stayed the same as in the 14 Pro, the battery life stayed also the same, even the display size and resolution stayed identical. But this can't be further from the truth because 15 Pro packs a few small upgrades that make a big difference. As I already said, the hardware side of the cameras stayed exactly the same, main 48 megapixel sensor coupled with 12 megapixel ultra wide and a 12 megapixel 3x zoom camera. All sensors have the same size and aperture, the only improvement being the algorithms, smart HDR5 and a photonic engine too. And if we put two photos side by side, one taken on the 14 Pro and one on the 15 Pro, we can clearly see the improvements. The photo from the 15 Pro has much more detail and textures. The sheer amount of preserved information is greater, and the main reason for it is the resolution of the photos themselves. Now, the iPhone 15 Pro shoots in 24 megapixels by default, instead of 12 megapixels on the 14 Pro. What I find interesting is that these 24 megapixel photos weigh only slightly more than 12 megapixel photos on the 14 Pro. Another thing that I think we can all agree on is that iPhone 15 Pro has much better HDR range. It preserves highlights better, and the sky and bright elements are less blown out, which is something the last iPhones have had troubles with. Another notable improvement is with portraits. The portraits taken on 1X are very similar in terms of colors and edge detection, with 15 Pro having more details and slightly improved dynamic range. The interesting thing about portraits is that 15 Pro now doesn't require you to go to the portrait mode to take portrait photos. Now the cameras capture depth information at all times, so if I see an F here in the corner, I can just take a normal photo and turn it into a portrait later. This is a small thing, but an important one. Here's an interesting fact. Launching the camera on the 15 Pro is now faster than on the 14 Pro. Yeah, I'm slightly cheating here because I'm using the action button to launch the camera on 15 Pro, and this action button is kind of a big deal, something you just have to try. iPhone 14 Pro doesn't have it and is equipped with only a good old mute switch. The action button, the 15 Pro, can do many more things aside from switching to silent mode. It can start a voice memo, turn on the flashlight, perform any of your shortcuts, or in my case, launch a camera. Trust me, once you get used to it, it is a bit painful to go back to the phone without it. But of course, if you're trying to buy the best deal Pro iPhone for the least amount of money, you will not miss the action button on the 14 Pro. But I'm gonna come back to the price later. I feel like I'm getting sidetracked a bit and that I should go back to comparing the cameras, so let's do that. Ultra wide and zoom cameras. This will be a pretty short comparison since the sensors themselves are exactly the same on the 15 Pro as they are on the 14 Pro. Ultra wide and zoom cameras don't have 24 megapixel resolution and take standard 12 megapixel shots, so the amount of detail on 14 Pro and 15 Pro is very similar. The only difference is that 15 Pro has, again, slightly better dynamic range and treats highlights a bit better. Of course, there are also videos, but only the most attentive of you will notice that I still haven't talked about 48 megapixel RAW and HEIF photos, and the reason being the pronounced lack of differences. Since RAW photos capture the entirety of the information from the sensor, and the sensors of the 14 Pro and 15 Pro are the same, the photos turn out also exactly the same. And those HEIF photos, initially I thought only the 15 Pro could shoot them, but iOS 17 brought them to the 14 Pro as well. This means that if you have an iPhone with 256 gigabytes or more, depending on how often you take photos, turning on these HEIF photos on the 14 Pro will basically negate all the difference and advantage of the 15 Pro with those 24 megapixels, but again, only if you have enough space. Now I think it's time to take a quick break and talk about this video sponsor, PowerPeak. PowerPeak sent me 4 great products that I think everyone needs. The first one is this cool glass camera lens protector. The clarity of my photos remains top-notch even when I use flash, which is a big win for me. The protector is made from high quality tempered glass, and it also features a metal bezel, adding an extra layer of durability. What really seals the deal is the oleophobic layer that keeps fingerprints away. To protect my phone even further, there is a tempered screen protector. Installing it is a piece of cake, even your mom can do it without bubbles. The 9H Plus hardness really keeps scratches and smudges away, plus the anti-spy feature is a nice touch. I like the added privacy when I'm in public. It's thin but offers robust protection. Highly recommend for anyone who wants to keep their screen in mint condition. And if you're gonna buy the new iPhones with Type-C port, you're gonna need a proper cable and a charger. The braided Type-C to Type-C cable from PowerPeak is a great choice that allows connecting a wide array of devices at high speeds, and it's built to last. The nylon cord is tangle-free and the aluminum casing makes the connectors really durable. As for the charger, the MagSafe charger from PowerPeak is a great alternative to Apple's original charger. It looks the same way and works the same way, strong magnets, QI compatibility. What else do you need? I will leave links to all these products in the description for you. You know, I really want to talk about shooting videos because this year iPhone 15 Pro has a few aces up its sleeve, but I just can't stand but mention how impressive the weight difference is. iPhone 15 Pro feels a bit lighter than the 14 Pro thanks to the titanium chassis. The rounded edges on the 15 Pro make it much more comfortable to hold and use, and if you think that I'm exaggerating, just go to the nearest store and try it yourself. The 15 Pro is lighter and more ergonomic without sharp edges of the 14 Pro. Of course, titanium is more durable and scratch resistant than stainless steel. Mine iPhone 15 Pro is a natural titanium color and it looks absolutely gorgeous. The 14 Pro I have is just black, and I know the looks are subjective and there are many people who would prefer the glossy stainless steel of the 14 Pro to the matte finish of the 15 Pro titanium. But in my humble opinion, the 15 Pro looks more mature and serious, ready for beating, and in Pro phone, this is extremely important. Yes, if we look at crash tests online, we'll see that the curved edges of the 15 Pro made it slightly more prone to shattered back glass, but this is a trade-off I'm ready to accept because you're only going to drop your phone a few times, but you're going to use it every single day for many hours on end, and in my case, the comfort outweighs the durability of the glass. Luckily, the front glass of the 15 Pro didn't see any durability compromises, and despite having slightly rounded edges, it is still as strong as in the 14 Pro. The displays themselves are very similar, same size and resolution, even brightness is identical, 2000 nits, but bezels on the 15 Pro are much slimmer, which allow it to make the phone a tad bit smaller. I must say, to a regular person, this difference might mean nothing, but to any tech enthusiast, the new bezels and new look are a substantial change. The display feels larger and is even more impactful. I know it is still far from being totally bezel-less, but what we already have is very much cutting edge. Aside from edges, great displays on both, and I cannot pinpoint a single technical difference between them. Yet there are plenty of technical differences where we are heading. Comparing videos. Very smooth subway, I know. So videos taken in HDR 4K 60 look very similar. It appears that the smart HDR5 applies only in photos because the highlights, shadows, and dynamic range on videos from both phones is absolutely identical, but 15 Pro has three major improvements here. One, 15 Pro can now record in log, which give much more headroom for color grading. Here is a video from the 14 Pro and a color graded log video from the 15 Pro. The 15 Pro is not a proper cinema camera yet in terms of lens flexibility, but in terms of quality and headroom for color grading, the 15 Pro is much closer to Pro cameras than the 14 Pro. The second improvement for videos is that 15 Pro now can switch between all three lenses when shooting 4K 60. 14 Pro can do that only in 4K 30. And the third major improvement is that the 15 Pro can record ProRes 4K 60 straight to the external drive. You just plug in the drive, and once you see Type-C text in the camera, you're good to go. I think you know where this is going. Type-C port and connectivity. Despite being very similar to the iPhone 15 Pro in almost every way, the 14 Pro has one gigantic disadvantage. It uses a slow Lightning port. I don't need to tell you how limited the Lightning is. It is super slow. It doesn't allow you to connect anything without a ton of hubs or adapters, adapters, and overall is a terrible port by modern standards. Type-C on the 15 Pro is far more flexible. I can connect an Ethernet cable through an adapter and use cable internet instead of cellular or Wi-Fi for higher speeds. Or I can connect a hub with internet, SD card, and charging all at the same time. Or I can connect the external drive and record videos straight onto it, just like I said before. The Type-C port is a huge deal and improvement that everyone whose workflow is more demanding and creative than watching funny videos will notice. You know how I hate leaving the performance for the end, which is especially true in this case, because the processor inside the 15 Pro is a very interesting one. The A17 Pro, in terms of benchmarks, is only slightly faster than the A16 and the 14 Pro, but all of the improvements are visible only when you start to do really demanding stuff. For example, playing games. In demanding and heavy titles, the 15 Pro performs better. With higher frame rate, the 14 Pro is not slow by any means, it's still a very fast and responsive phone, great for playing games, but the 15 Pro is just faster. I think the main display of how fast and powerful the 15 Pro is the fact that I can just sit and play Resident Evil and Death Stranding with a wireless controller with no issues at stable 30 FPS. The only issue is that 15 Pro might be too small for this, and if you really want to play these games, you should go for the 15 Pro Max. Yet, nonetheless, I cannot say that this huge gap in performance between 15 Pro and 14 Pro is directly visible in the regular use cases like browsing the web or opening social media apps, but those who need that power will definitely see the difference. This leaves us with only one thing that I haven't covered: the battery life. And here I have a fair amount of concerns. You see, the 14 Pro that I have in 1 year has seen a noticeable battery degradation, and this is a common problem for the 14 Pros and 14 Pro Maxes. In my testing, the 15 Pro in terms of battery life performs very similarly to the 14 Pro when it was new, and in some cases noticeably better. 1 full day of battery life, easy. My main concern here is whether the 15 Pro will have the same battery health issues as the 14 Pro, because I will be extremely disappointed if next year the 15 Pro will have its battery health in 80s. So, which one should you buy? iPhone 15 Pro starts at $1,000 in the US. The 14 Pro, however, can be bought for less than $800 if you want to look successful, you don't care about pro features, and you're not planning to record log videos or playing AAA games, then the 14 Pro will be more than enough for you. But if your iPhone is an instrument for you that makes you money and you're planning to step into video making, then the 15 Pro is the one to go for. Trust me, the Type-C and improved video capabilities are well worth the extra $200. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.